Wendy, and thank you, Jennifer. I sort of feel like giving up at this point, because what we really should do is take everything Jennifer said paragraph by paragraph and have a discussion about what she said, because really it encapsulates everything we need to talk about today through the personal experience of somebody who both has dementia, if you read Jennifer's book, it was no simple task getting a diagnosis, even as a GP, and there's some real telling messages. Do follow up with Jennifer today, or read her book, or go to her website, because the insight you get from somebody with that lived experience of dementia is quite phenomenal. So what I want to do in sort of quick time is give you an overview of how I think we've got to where we are today, and looking a little bit ahead about where we're going to go to. I'm not going to be able to do that much in 15 minutes, but I would just encourage you, if you're interested today, to come along to our Alzheimer Society conference in about a month's time on the 20th and 21st of May, where over the 2 days we have got quite an incredible lineup of speakers. So we've got Steve Powis, the Medical Director of NHS England, Julie Ogley, the new President of ADAS, the Directors of Adult Social Services. We've got Dave Sharp, the new Director of the Dementia Care Technology Research Centre at the Dementia Research Institute, Lenny Shawcross, the Director of the World Dementia Council, Carolyn Dinage, the Minister, and Matt Hancock, the Secretary of State. So over the 2 days, I think we'll get a fairly good follow-up from today. So please do take that as an opportunity to explore the things we're talking about today a little bit further. There are really, what I want to talk about is 3 areas that, to me and in Alzheimer's Society, are fundamental to transforming the experience of people living with dementia. And it's not just leading a nation, but it's actually leading internationally that we're doing. And it's interesting when you go to conferences abroad how much people look to what we're doing here in the UK. They don't look to us for leadership on many other things at the moment. But on dementia, I certainly do think we continue to have that global leadership, and we should be proud of what we're doing across these 3 areas of the support we provide, the research we provide, and the change we make in the wider society. And the examples I put on here are from Alzheimer's Society, but this is wider than us. So the Dementia Friends programme is hosted by us, but is wider. Research, we're putting in that amount of money, but we've got £190 million of government money invested in the Dementia Research Institute, as well as other support. And of course, the local support from us, from people like Home Instead, from many other organisations, making that big difference. But to go back to what Jennifer said, it all comes back to the dementia statements. These are 5 statements that are produced by people living with dementia. We produced statements, they were called the I statements in 2009. Some of you may remember when we were one of the first countries in the world to produce a dementia strategy, and we had I statements. And there were 7 statements, and they all started with I want, I need, I expect. These are fundamentally different. Firstly, because we involve many more people with dementia in producing these statements, and we involve their family caregivers as well. And that produced a richer, more fundamental set of statements that really drive everything we do. And I'll put the first 3 up, and then I'll put the last 2 up. I'm not going to talk through them all at length, because I haven't got time. But let me just draw your attention to the first 5 words, because to me they sum it up. Each statement starts with the words, "we have the right to." And that's a fundamental difference from a dependency culture where people feel beholden and feel grateful for what they get given, to actually saying, as dementia is covered by the UN Declaration of Rights for People with Disabilities, we have a right. People have a right to the support. And these go through the different areas of rights that people expect, both as family caregivers, because the other thing is it's we. It's not just people with dementia, but it's recognising that family caregivers have a role as well. One of the challenges that we may discuss during today is that the needs and interests of the 2 are not always matched, and you need to be quite careful to make sure you keep both in your sights. And the only other thing I'd say on these statements, because you can read them all on our website, on endless other websites, on the government website and so on, is that in the first one, I think it's really important, and this is a step forward we've made, is it says we have the right to make choices about our lives, including taking risks. And I think we have a challenge here that in the modern culture where we're all about safeguarding, we're all about risk management, the danger is we don't let people take risks. I went and spent a couple of days living in a care home. I wanted to see what it was like, and if you just go and visit, they sort of just show you around, and the manager keeps a tab on you. By staying there a couple of days, they forgot who I was, and I think they thought I was a resident after a bit. I just sort of settled in. And I was talking to one person on the second day I was there, and we were sitting in the morning, and I said to her, and she had quite early onset dementia. I'm not sure why she was in a care home. She may have, to use crude language, she may have been dumped there. And I was worried about that. But anyway, I was chatting to her and I said, why don't we have a cup of tea? And she said, oh, we're not allowed to do that. And I said to the manager, why can't we make a cup of tea? And they said, oh, it would be too risky to let someone with dementia boil a kettle. And this was somebody who a month earlier had been living in her own home. And every time I boil a kettle, I risk scalding myself. And nothing more serious is going to happen than that. So this idea that people with dementia can't take risks, I think is a fundamental shift, that we need to allow people to live life to the full. So those 5 statements, these are the last 2 about being partners in care and being involved in research. Please do use those 5 statements as your guiding principles in all that you do. Now, we do get dementia more in the news than we've ever done before. I have this sort of love-hate relationship with the Daily Express. They've just about worked out, and here they've got dementia, but I think they've just about worked out how to spell Alzheimer's and worked out that it does fit on the front page. But they tend to produce articles that are not very meaningful and are not very evidence-based. So this one, Sugar Speeds Up Dementia, it's normally, and I don't want to be pejorative about people across the pond, but it's normally a Midwest United States university that's done a bit of study on 40 people or even 40 mice, and then produced a report in some academic journal, which is probably not highly rated. Then it gets picked up by the newspaper and say the answer is. There was one a couple of weeks ago actually in the Daily Mail that said if you eat mushrooms twice a week, you halve your risk of dementia. So I thought, great, I'll have them 4 times a week and I won't get dementia at all. But it is not evidence-based. So what's good, though, when I challenged the Daily Express, because I went to see their sub-editors, and I said, why do you do this? Can't we get you to write better articles? And they did take on board that they maybe ought to work a bit harder to make sure the articles were a bit more evidence-based. But the good thing was they said the reason we have a policy, and they do have a policy of about every 2 weeks putting a front-page story about dementia, is our readers are interested. Now, I think that's the big change we've seen over the last 5 or so years. We're now getting people who are prepared to talk about dementia. It's a similar story we had with cancer 30 years ago, where it comes out of the shadows. Once people start talking about it, then you can start doing something about it. So let me take you through these 3 domains that I talked about at the beginning of society, support, and research. So probably the biggest change is, as I say, getting people to talk about it. And the Dementia Friends programme is about changing how a nation thinks, talks, and acts on dementia. When we started the programme, we had a commitment to the Prime Minister David Cameron in 2012 that we would get 1 million dementia friends. And people said, no, you'll never manage that. That's not going to happen. We've now got 2.8 million. And we've got about 500 people a day becoming dementia friends. I took a group of MPs to visit the Dementia Research Institute last week, and one of the MPs tweeted afterwards that we had 500 people a week because she couldn't believe it was 500 people a day, so I had to correct her. But we have, because we've got, some of you are here, astounding Dementia Friends champions who are running awareness sessions in their community, in their sports club, in their gardening club, in their faith group, in their workplace. It's like a rolling ball. It's going to continue. It's developing. People are wanting to talk about it, and people in the Dementia Friends programme get permission to understand a little bit and to engage with other people. And I love this picture because one of the partnerships we've got is with the Cub Scouts and their commitment to actually lead a next generation of people for whom dementia won't be scary, won't be off radar, won't be off the grid. It'll be something they talk about, they can engage with, they can do something about. So that Dementia Friends programme is absolutely core. And we've now got it running in over 40 countries around the world. So it's not just what we're doing here, but it's now a global programme to change the way people talk about dementia. And if you go to some countries in Africa where there isn't even a word for dementia in the language, or Alzheimer's, if you go to some places, I was talking to my counterpart in Zimbabwe, where people are still, and I don't want to shock you, but there are still people who are being burnt alive by their family members because they're branded as witches because they have dementia. That is still happening. So Dementia Friends has a lot to do, not just in this country, but around the world. And that's just showing some of the places around the world where the programme's operating. But it's not just about individual action, it's about dementia-friendly communities. And you won't be able to read what's on here, but I love this. It always reminds me of the Start Right Shoes advert. It's sort of that sunny, sort of uplifting picture. And this shows that you can actually live well with dementia. You can actually do a lot to enable people at least to live better than they otherwise could. And that's about changing the way the community works. And what it says at the top in yellow is empowering people with dementia to have high aspirations, confidence, and know they can contribute. And again, you can pick this up afterwards. In the bubbles around the side, it talks about the different things you can do to change the high street, to change the local community, to make it possible for people to feel safe going out of their front door, to make it possible for them to get the support, to feel that the community will understand them when they struggle, when they find life difficult, when they get confused with change at the checkout, when they're not quite sure where they're going. That can be transformed by very small changes, very little adjustments in the community. And then, as well as the community-based programs, and if I go back to how far we've come, the commitment to the government was we'd have 20 dementia-friendly communities by 2020. At the last count, we've got 344. But one of the messages for you to take away today is that we have to make sure we know what a good dementia-friendly community is. And the danger is, and you'll see this again when I talk about the NHS, the danger is people sign up to something and they feel that by signing up they've somehow done it. If some of you will remember back in the 1980s when local authorities committed to become nuclear-free, and they put up a sign saying you're now entering nuclear-free Islington, as if the cruise missile would see the sign and turn around and go the other way. It didn't really mean anything. And that's our danger. Our worry is that people sign up to saying they'll be dementia-friendly. I was in one town recently, and I said, well, you're committed to being dementia-friendly, what have you done? And they said, oh, we've done it. I said, oh, that's great. And they said, yeah, we've repainted the bus stop seats. And I said, well, that's good, but it's not on its own the entirety of becoming dementia-friendly. And the advice from Jennifer and her colleagues who are living with dementia is it's all about becoming dementia-friendly. You can't say you've got there. You can't award yourself a tick and say, we've done it. It's about continual improvement. So that's a lesson for going forward, is that as people sign up and say they're becoming dementia-friendly, make sure we hold them to it and make sure it's meaningful. But we also, as this slide shows, got now, I think, 16 guides for different sectors of society. So this is where we, from Alzheimer Society, support an industry group or a community group of organisations to produce their own guides. So this one shows 3 utilities, so that's gas, electricity, telecoms, water companies, the finance and insurance industry to make sure that people can continue with banking, the dementia-friendly media and broadcast guide to make sure that broadcasters represent people better with dementia and listen better to the voices of people with dementia. Those are just 3. We've now got 14 of these guides. And what's important is not just that the guides are produced, but then somebody in the industry takes responsibility for driving it forward. So the finance guide, HSBC are leading on driving forward. And one of the things they've just done is said that whilst you can have lasting power of attorney, they've now set up a system where the person with dementia can still have control of some of their money, because the psychological taking everything away and not being allowed to do anything. So you can now still have a debit card at HSBC with lasting power of attorney in place, and you can still access some of your money and be in control of some of your financial affairs. Really important step forward. The utility guide, we've got British Gas working to make sure that people who read the meters are aware of people potentially having dementia and signpost people to Alzheimer's Society or other local support where they spot something that needs attention. And the broadcast guide, Channel 4 are leading that, working particularly with script writers to make sure that when people include people with dementia in, say, a soap opera, it is actually a faithful representation. I can't remember the characters because I'm useless on soaps, but I remember a few years ago in EastEnders, there was a character who developed dementia, and the minute he developed dementia, he no longer had a speaking part. He was wallpaper. He was there on screen. And what we came to last year and the year before with Emmerdale was having the vicar with dementia, and he actually talked about his journey. So you can do it. You can make it work better. This is just some stats on the reason why it's important, that the fear and isolation that is felt by people with dementia and their family carers. And that leads me into talking about what we do to give support to people at the local level. At Alzheimer's Society, we've said in Fixed Dementia Care campaign, hospitals need to understand dementia and home care services need to understand dementia. And just a couple of statistics here. Only 2% of hospital staff we surveyed said they understood the needs of people with dementia, and at the bottom, 1 in 3 home care workers don't have inadequate dementia training, they have none at all. So they're trained in health and safety and lifting and handling and all the things that statutorily are required, but they're not doing anything to be skilled on dementia. And Home Instead, who we'll hear from shortly, are a notable exception to that. But across the industry, it's only 1 in 3 home care workers, 1 in 3 don't have any dementia training. You go back to the hospitals, in the government's commitment, the dementia strategy, it says that in tier 2 of the training, it says everyone who has clinical engagement on dementia should have some dementia training. That's if you're in A&E, if you're anywhere apart from maternity and pediatrics, basically you're going to have people with dementia in hospital. And we found last year that having been running this program for 5 years or more, 6 years, we only had 120,000 people who had had that tier 2 training. Now the good news is that in 6 months last year, by a push on it, we increased that figure by 12%. So the willingness is there. We just need to get the time in the program, in the training programs, to make sure that anyone who has contact with people with dementia, so it's not just a dementia ward. I went to Southampton Hospital and they proudly showed me their dementia ward, which had 17 people. And I said, how many people in this hospital have dementia? And they said, well, we reckon probably about 400 at the moment. So yeah, the 17 people were getting Rolls-Royce treatment in the dementia ward. What about the other 380, whatever? So really important to get that addressed. And these things are 3 aspects that we need to look at in the way the health system works. The cost, to make sure that we're spending the money wisely. At the moment, we spend too much money with people being in hospital when they don't need to be there. It costs £450 a day, I think I'm right, Martin, to be in a hospital, something like that. £450 for a week's support in the community would it won't cost you anything like that. Twice that will get you really good residential care. And we're spending money on people being in hospital when they don't need to be there. The quality needs to be right, as I've indicated with the home care, but we see it in care homes, really mixed quality. And one of the challenges going forward, and another one I want to leave with you, is that too many care homes today are rated by CQC as residential rather than nursing. But if you look at the changes over the last decade, most people going into care homes now, because of the cost and the way you can get supported in the community better, are people with nursing needs. But because they're only rated as residential, they're not assessed by CQC for their nursing support, which then has the knock-on effect of people being transmitted into hospital when they don't need to be, when they could be supported in their care home. So I'm sure Martin may pick up on that later on. So there's a real issue there about quality. And then access, of course, is making sure that wherever you live, you get the dementia care and support you need. I was saying to somebody earlier just now, I went to Yorkshire recently, and in Tadcaster, I went to a GP practice, and they had a dementia support worker from Alzheimer's Society working as part of the team, was there every couple of weeks, had a caseload, and supported people well with dementia. Then went 20 miles up the road to a place I won't mention, and I spoke to a GP practice there, and they said, oh, we don't have any dementia here. And I thought, well, this is breaking news. Hold the front page. There must be something in the water that stops people getting dementia. But they had complete denial, and it was an area of high elderly population. It wasn't a university town with lots of young people. It was a rural community with a lot of elderly people. And they still believed that they didn't have any dementia, so they didn't need to know about it. So those 3 things of cost, quality, and access, we've come a long way, but we have a lot more to do. GOVCONNECT I won't dwell on, but this is the service Alzheimer's Society is now rolling out. It's in the long-term plan of the NHS. So wherever you are, you'll get support face-to-face in the middle box there, telephone support in the top box, and volunteers engaging and supporting you on day-to-day living. So really important. And we want to make sure from Alzheimer's Society that instead of the 2,000 services we have at the moment, which are a bit of a patchwork quilt, wherever you live in the next 5 years, we should get to a point where we guarantee that there's a trained dementia navigator, for want of a better term, dementia advisor, dementia support system that integrates telephone support, website support, face-to-face support, and volunteers in one seamless program. Most people with dementia, well, most of us, are incredibly frustrated when we have to retell our story over and over again every time we go to a different bit of the NHS. And on average, we worked out that people with dementia have to retell their story 23 times. And, it does wear you down, anyone. Every time you go to hospital, every time you even go to the GP practice and see a different doctor, every time you go and see a specialist, you have to start all over again. We want to make sure that doesn't happen and that there's a continuity and we know who the person is. And technology should enable us to do that. We should have data that enables us to keep in touch with people in an effective, supportive way. And the final area I want to talk about is research. Ultimately, this is the answer. Now, the government in the 2009 dementia strategy said they were going to double the investment in dementia research. They've done that, and the government will tell you how marvellous that is. Let you into a little secret. The only reason they've managed to double it is because it was so pitifully small to begin with. So yes, it's great they've doubled it, but we still have 6 times as many people working on cancer research as we have on dementia research. And yet today, dementia is the biggest cause of death. It's also the thing people are most afraid of. And as we all know in this room, it's the thing that isn't being treated and supported properly. So we really need the government to continually upping its commitment and to be a global leader. The Dementia Research Institute, this just summarises what I just said, that there's far more going on in cancer research than dementia research, so we don't know as much. The Dementia Research Institute is a great new step forward. So we made a commitment with Alzheimer's Research UK to put money in, and we've got £190 million from the government. We've now got money from each of these host institutes. And it's a virtual institute where all these universities are now collaborating together. And it is the first in the world. And just last month, we launched the care technology. So we're saying it's not just about biomedical science. It's not just finding the drug, because we've had no new drug for 15 years that even reduces the symptoms of dementia, let alone stops it happening. So we want to keep pushing on that. But meanwhile, probably for the next 10, 20 years, we're going to need to carry on working on care and support. And as Jennifer said, the opportunity for technology to work is transformational if it's right. And there's a lot of rubbish out there. And we need to make sure that the assistive technology people get is good. I'll tell you one very quick story. Somebody I met from a company came to us and said, will we support their product? And we said, well, what is it? And they said, well, when people go out of their house with dementia, they often forget to take their keys. And we said, yeah, true. So they said, well, we could have a system whereby when they open the door, a voice says, remember to take your keys. And it sounded great. We then tested it on a group of people with dementia, and they all said, which is obvious when you think about it, that would freak you out because you'd think there's somebody else in the house. So this disembodied voice. So this product that the company wanted to sell actually wasn't going to do the job that they were asking it to do, because it would scare people rather than support them. So that technology research is going to be really important. And finally, just to end where I started, saying it's not just a national challenge, it's international. Every 3 minutes somebody develops dementia in the UK, but around the world it's every 3 seconds. Every 3 seconds somebody is developing dementia. And those figures show on the right there the growth of numbers. So we're going to have from 50 million to 150 million in the next 30 years. It is, as the person who did the UN AIDS programme told me, this is today's global health challenge. More than any other disease area, dementia is the global health challenge. But I think what's encouraging is that if we keep the foot on the pedal, as it were, we keep driving forward stuff in the UK, we can continue to be a world leader, make a difference for people at home, but also drive the programmes internationally to make the biggest difference ever. Thank you very much.